room was cold, the floorboards groaning under every footstep. Children huddled together near the far wall, knees drawn up, arms wrapped tight around themselves. Their eyes darted from the auctioneer to the townsfolk and back again, wide and wary, searching for signs of mercy. Dust floated in the shafts of pale sunlight that leaked through the high windows, settling on the old benches and the polished gavel that gleamed in the auctioneer's hand. The hall smelled of old wood, cold metal, and damp wool. Whispers floated like ghosts. "They won't pick us," one boy said, voice trembling. "I bet they never pick us," a girl added, rubbing her arms. Another child clutched a threadbare coat and whispered to no one in particular, "Don't let them see me shake." The auctioneer banged the gavel against the desk. "Quiet. We start with number 12, boy, age 9. Let's have your bids." Murmurs and coughs ran through the crowd. $20. A man with a sun-wrinkled face raised a hand. $30. A woman whispered from the corner, voice sharp with disdain. "Don't waste your money. That one's all trouble." The boy flinched at every word, at every slight, at every accusation that felt like a slap. The children shifted uneasily, huddling closer. "Don't cry," the girl whispered. "You'll make it worse." He shook his head, eyes wet, lips trembling. "I can't help it," he said. The auctioneer's voice cut across the murmurs, harsh and impatient. "Next. Number 13, age 7. Step up." The child looked at the floor. No one moved to meet her eyes. Another child whispered, "They don't want us. Nobody ever wants us." At the back of the room, a woman entered quietly. She wore a dark coat and moved with a measured, deliberate step, but her presence shifted the air. Heads turned, some curious, some suspicious. She didn't look at the children first. She scanned the hall with calm eyes, measuring the space, the people, the tension. Her fingers brushed the edge of her coat as if steadying herself. Children glanced up at her, their fear mingled with a faint, impossible hope. They had never seen her before, and yet something about her made the room feel heavier. Quieter. The auctioneer barked another name, a child older and taller than the rest. Number 14. Step forward. The boy obeyed, shuffling forward, trying to make himself invisible. The murmur started again, low and cruel. "He's all skin and bones. Give him a stick and he'll run away. A waste of food, if you ask me." The boy's eyes flicked toward the woman at the back. She watched him, silent. The murmurs paused, broken by the weight of her gaze. She didn't speak, didn't move, just watched. "Number 15, the auctioneer called, his gavel pounding once more. The children waited for the same rejection, for the same judgment they had lived with all their lives. 15. "Who bids?" The town murmured, hands rose, voices called out numbers, low at first, then louder. $10.25. No more than 30. The children's stomachs tightened, a familiar dread crawling up their spines. Then the woman stepped forward. Silence fell. Whispers ceased mid-sentence. "I'll take them all," she said, quiet but firm. Every head turned at once, some in shock, some in disbelief. The auctioneer blinked, gavel poised in the air. "You all of them," he stammered. She nodded once. The children froze, unsure whether to believe or flee. One girl whispered under her breath, "She's serious." Another child's hand trembled as he reached for the hem of his coat. "Madam," the auctioneer said, clearing his throat, "you realize this is unusual." Her eyes didn't leave his. "I realize it," she said. Her voice carried authority, an invisible weight that made even the most hardened townsfolk quiet. A man at the side muttered, "Never seen anyone do that before." The children watched her, hearts hammering, half fearing she might change her mind. Paperwork was brought. She signed her name with deliberate strokes, the ink dark against the pale forms. Children stared at her, uncertain, almost afraid, like they had never seen a savior before. "You're really taking us," a boy whispered, barely audible. She looked at them, meeting each gaze, and nodded. "All of you." Relief and confusion mixed on the children's faces. Some smiled shakily. Some swallowed hard, not trusting the feeling. Some just stared. The room felt different now. The gavel no longer ruled. The murmurs had faded, replaced by quiet astonishment. The air smelled of ink, dust, and faint hope. Children whispered to each other, "She really means it." Another said, "Maybe this is the first time someone wanted us." The auctioneer cleared his throat, looking between the widow and the children, finally lowering his gavel. The townsfolk started to murmur again, now quieter, more uncertain. Some shook their heads, some muttered under their breath. The widow stepped back, allowing the children to gather their few belongings. She didn't speak again, only watched, attentive and silent. Her presence seemed to guard the room in a new way, a quiet shield over those who had only known rejection. A boy hesitated, looking at her, then at the floor, then finally whispered, "Will you really take care of us?" She crouched slightly, meeting his eyes. "Yes," she said simply, and that was all the assurance they needed for now. Children shuffled after her toward the door, tentative steps on the cold wooden floor. Dust motes swirled around their feet in the sunlight, catching the brief glimmer of possibility. The auctioneer's gavel lay untouched, a symbol of the past they were leaving behind. They glanced back once, then forward, hesitant yet drawn into a future they hadn't dared imagine. She led them out of the hall, quiet but steady, carrying the weight of new responsibility as firmly as she carried herself. The air outside was colder, but it didn't matter. They had been chosen, and in that choice, they found the faintest warmth of hope. The house smelled of damp wood and old smoke. The door creaked as the widow pushed it open, and the children stepped inside hesitantly, their shoes scuffing the cold floorboards. The wind rattled the windows, and the hearth was empty, dark and hollow. A half-broken swing leaned against the porch outside, swinging slightly in the breeze. One boy's hand brushed the wall as they moved in, trailing fingers over peeling paint. "Is this ours now?" he asked quietly. The widow didn't answer immediately. She closed the door behind them and set down the bundle of their belongings. "For now," she said. The word felt heavy, almost reluctant, as if it carried the weight of a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. The children looked around, eyes darting from shadow to shadow. One girl tugged on the sleeve of her coat. "Where will we sleep?" The widow pointed toward the back room. "There's beds, one each." Her voice was firm, not cruel, but it carried the unmistakable edge of authority. Another child whispered, "Do we have to stay here?" She looked at him, meeting his gaze evenly. "You stay. You have no choice." His jaw tightened, and he looked away. Fear flickered in every movement, in every hesitation. A silence settled for a moment, heavy and watchful. The children shuffled their feet, their glances flicking to each other, searching for unspoken reassurance. "Will there be food?" asked the smallest boy, his voice trembling. She nodded, moving toward the kitchen, hands brushing the counters as she passed. "Yes. Soon." She carried herself like someone stepping into old pain she couldn't yet name. The children followed, hesitant, each one testing the space, touching furniture, scanning corners as if the walls might speak back at them. One of the older girls crouched near a window, peering out at the porch. "It's broken," she said softly, nodding at the swing, "just like everything else." The widow came beside her, her shadow long in the fading light. "It can be fixed," she said. There was a pause. "Maybe we'll fix a few things. Together." The words were simple, but the children didn't trust simplicity. They had learned that hope often came with sharp edges. The fire in the hearth was cold. She knelt and poked at the ashes with a stick, lifting the remnants of burned wood. "We'll light it soon," she said, voice steady. "You'll have warmth." Another child whispered. It smells like ghosts. The widow looked at him, a faint shadow passing over her face. Maybe, she admitted. But ghosts can't hurt you here. Not anymore. The children glanced at one another, unsure whether to believe or keep their distance. The tension was thicker than the cold. Footsteps creaked in the hallway, and one boy froze. You won't leave us, will you? He asked. She straightened, leaning against the wall. I'm not going anywhere, she said. A girl tugged at her sleeve. Promise. The widow's eyes softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. I promise, but you have to stay close. No running off. The children swallowed hard. They had learned that promises in their world were often broken before morning. They began to explore the small rooms, each step echoing. The floorboards moaned under their weight. A boy opened a closet and peeked inside, finding only dust and a few old blankets. Nothing here, he muttered. Another child kicked at the hearth. Cold, she said. It doesn't feel like home. The widow stood silently in the doorway, watching them, understanding that home wasn't built in a moment. It was earned, step by careful step. Through patience and quiet endurance, one child sat on the edge of a bed, hugging knees. I don't like it here, he admitted. It's too quiet, too empty. She crouched beside him. Quiet isn't always empty. Sometimes it's the first step to something new, but you'll have to fill it yourself, too. Another whispered. What if we can't? She glanced at the flickering shadows in the corners. Then we try anyway. That's all we can do. Her words hung in the room like smoke, slow and steady, waiting for the children to understand. Hours passed. The sun dipped behind the trees, leaving the house in a half-light that made everything look sharper, colder. The children began retreating into corners, pulling blankets around themselves, curling small bodies into the shadows. Their whispers faded, replaced by the quiet of uncertainty. One boy glanced toward her. Are you really going to stay? She nodded without speaking, her eyes heavy with the realization that the task ahead would be far harder than she had imagined. Each child seemed suspended in that quiet, haunted by memories of rejection, loss, and the strange, uncertain comfort of someone who chose them. The widow moved slowly through the rooms, checking each child, brushing a hand over hair, adjusting blankets, speaking only when necessary. The creaking floorboards and empty hearth emphasized the silence that now enveloped the house. Outside, the half-broken swing shifted slightly in the evening wind, a quiet echo of the children's hesitation. She watched from the doorway, hands folded, realizing that authority and care were not enough. She would need patience, and even that might not be enough to undo the fear each child carried by nightfall. The house was still. The children huddled in corners, the widow standing in the center, observing the shadows. Listening to the soft breathing and occasional whisper, she understood, with a cold clarity, that this home would not be gentle. It would demand everything of her, as much as it demanded trust from them, and she knew she could not fail. Not now, not when the weight of so many lonely years rested on the fragile promise of this evening. She exhaled slowly, letting the silence speak for a moment, before moving quietly to prepare the hearth. The children did not speak, but they watched, and that was the first sign of fragile acceptance. The wind rattled the window panes, sending a shiver through the small house. Candlelight flickered in the hearth, throwing long shadows across the walls and floor. The children huddled together on the worn rug, knees drawn up, arms wrapped tight. Their eyes were wide, darting to every corner, every shadow, as if the darkness could reach into their bones. One boy whispered, I can hear them again. Another girl pressed her face into her hands. Hear who? He asked. The people, talking, like before. She shook her head, trembling. I don't know, but I hear them. The widow knelt beside them, her hand brushing over the smallest child's hair. It's just the wind, she said softly, voice steady but low. Nothing else. The boy looked at her, doubt flickering across his features. It doesn't sound like wind. The candle flickered again, shadows dancing along the walls. The children whispered secrets in broken breaths, some words catching on fear. I saw him, one girl said, voice barely audible. Who? The boy asked. Father, or someone like him. She shook, biting her lip. Not real. Not here, the widow interrupted firmly. It's not real. The children glanced at one another, unsure if her words could shield them from the ghosts of memory. But it feels real, one whispered. I remember. The widow drew a deep breath. Memories can be heavy, but we'll carry them together. A soft whimper came from the corner. The smallest boy's shoulders shook as he cried quietly. The widow said, pulling him close. I'm here. It's okay. I'm not going anywhere. The child buried his face into her coat, trembling. The others watched, some with curiosity, some with fear. One girl whispered, Do you always stay so still? The widow didn't answer immediately. She tightened her arms around the boy, letting the candlelight reflect off the dark lines under her eyes. I stay until it's safe, she said finally. That's all. The wind rattled the windows again, louder this time, dragging loose curtains into the shadows. Children flinched with each gust, gripping one another. I hear footsteps, one boy said, voice cracking. The widow shook her head. Only the floorboards. Only the wind. Another whispered. I saw a shadow move. She turned slowly, eyes sweeping the corners. Shadows move when you imagine them, she said. Your mind makes shapes in the dark. A girl swallowed hard, but I feel them. They're watching. She didn't respond immediately, letting the fear sit in the room, heavy and waiting. Then I'll watch with you, she said finally. The children clung together, whispering to one another. Do you think she's scared? One asked. I don't know, another said. She doesn't show it. The widow knelt on the floor, facing them. I'm scared, she admitted, but fear doesn't get to decide for us. We do. The children were silent for a moment. Then a girl said, We have to be brave. All of us. Another child nodded, pressing closer to the group. Even if we can't. Outside, the wind howled, dragging the night through every crack and seam. Inside, the candle trembled in the hearth, flickering against old walls that had known many years of silence. Tell me a story, one boy whispered. The widow hesitated, then said, Once, long ago, there was a house filled with people who never left. They feared everything, until someone stayed. Then it became home. The children leaned in, whispering, listening, imagining. Did they ever leave? Another asked. No, she said softly. They stayed, because that was the only way to be safe. A girl rubbed her arms. I can't stop thinking about before, about what they said, about, her voice broke. About what? The widow asked gently. About being unwanted. The widow swallowed. You're wanted now, she said firmly. All of you, here, with me. The words floated in the candlelight, simple, but heavy. One by one, the children nodded, though the tightness in their chests didn't fully ease. The smallest boy hiccuped, still clinging. Will you stay? He whispered. I will, she said, pulling him closer. Until you sleep, until you know it's safe, until you know you're home. The wind rattled the windows, dragging shadows along the walls. The candle flame wavered, but the light held, casting the group in warmth against the dark. Another girl murmured, I don't hear them anymore. The widow's hand rested on her shoulder. Good. Let's keep it that way. One breath at a time. Hours passed slowly, punctuated by whispers, shuffles, and the occasional cry. The shadows in the corners seemed larger, heavier, but the widow stayed with them, watching, listening, breathing with them. Can we rest now? A boy whispered. Yes, she said. Lie down. Try to close your eyes. I'll stay. The children arranged themselves on the rug, curling tight against one another, faces pale in the flickering light. A sudden creak of a door made them start, and one girl gasped. The widow's hand shot out, pulling the smallest boy close, her eyes scanning the hall. Nothing moved. The candle trembled, shadows leaping. "It's okay," she whispered, voice firm, steady. "It's just the house. Just the floorboards. Nothing else." The children leaned into her, trusting, exhausted, trembling, but holding on to the fragile sense of safety she offered. The wind outside settled slightly, and the candle's glow became steadier. The house still smelled of old wood and damp smoke, but in the center of the room, huddled together, the widow and the children created a fragile, flickering warmth. She held the smallest boy close, listening. The shadows waited in the corners, the floorboards groaned with memory. But for the first time that night, the fear didn't feel endless. The widow moved slowly through the house, hands brushing over the edges of old furniture. The children were exploring again, small feet scuffing the floorboards, eyes wide at every shadow and corner. She opened a drawer in the back room and froze. Inside lay a stack of yellowed letters, tied together with faded ribbon, and a photograph of a man she hadn't seen in years. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the picture. The boy on the rug asked softly, "Who's that?" She swallowed, keeping her voice even. "Someone I used to know." The girl beside him pressed closer. "Did they? Like you?" She turned, eyes dark but steady. "They did, in their own way, and they hurt me in their own way." The children watched, unsure what to say. One whispered, "Did they leave you?" She nodded, staring down at the letters. "Yes, they left, and sometimes they come back in memories you don't want." Another child asked, "Do you cry for them?" She hesitated, then said quietly, "Sometimes, but not tonight. Tonight, we focus on us." The children settled closer, sensing her grief, but not fully understanding it. The wind rattled the windows, carrying the night into the corners of the room. The candle flame flickered across the photograph, and she brushed her fingers across the faded face. A boy spoke again. "Did you have a family?" Her eyes tightened. "I did, once, a long time ago." She dropped the letters back into the drawer, the sound sharp in the quiet room. Another whispered, "Like we did." She shook her head, voice low. "Worse. Sometimes families hurt more than the world." The children glanced at one another, whispering softly. "But you didn't leave us," a girl said, gripping the hem of her coat. She met the child's gaze, and for the first time, a faint smile passed her lips. "No, I didn't. Not now." She moved to another drawer and found a small wooden box. Inside were trinkets, a carved horse, a tarnished locket, a rusted key. She held them loosely, feeling the weight of memory pressing against her chest. "I thought I had lost these," she said. "Some things you never lose, even if you try," a child whispered. "Are they magic?" She shook her head. "No magic, just reminders. Reminders that even when things fall apart, pieces of them stay with you." Another boy asked, "Do they scare you?" She paused, letting the candlelight flicker across her face. "Sometimes, memories can scare you more than anything else." A girl crouched beside her. "Why do you keep them?" The widow glanced at her. "Because they tell me who I am, and they remind me of what I've survived." The children were quiet, each processing the words differently. One boy whispered, "I think I understand." "A little." She nodded, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "Good. That's enough for now. We don't have to understand everything at once." The wind rattled the windows again. The floorboards creaked, and the house felt alive with memory. Shadows danced over the walls, and she felt them press against her chest. She sank onto the edge of a bed, holding one of the letters loosely. The children gathered around her, small faces reflecting candlelight. "Were you happy?" one asked, voice tentative. She exhaled slowly. "Sometimes, and sometimes not. Life is never just one thing." Another whispered, "Did they ever come back?" She shook her head. "No, and that's why I stay. Because I can choose now. I can choose who I let in. And I chose you." The words were quiet, but firm, wrapping around the children like a fragile shield. A boy touched the photograph tentatively. "Do they miss you?" Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Maybe. But it doesn't matter. What matters is now." She folded the letters carefully, placing them back in the drawer. "What matters is here. Us. Tonight." The children shifted closer, pressing against each other and against her. One whispered, "We won't leave." She looked down at them, heart tightening. "I know you won't, and I won't either." The candle flickered again, casting long shadows across the walls. She looked around the room, at the small faces, the trembling hands, the wide eyes full of memory and fear. "Do you remember before?" one asked softly. "Yes," she said, voice low, "and I remember the pain. But I also remember the strength it gave me, and that strength is enough for all of us tonight." A girl nodded, her hand resting on her knee. "Then we're strong together." She smiled faintly. "Yes, we are. Stronger than we know." The wind outside softened, carrying the distant sound of creaking branches. She felt the weight of the letters, the photograph, the trinkets, and the memories pressing against her chest, but she didn't flinch. She breathed slowly, letting the candlelight settle over the group. The children whispered softly among themselves, talking about what they remembered, what they feared, and what they hoped. Each word was careful, tender, as if testing whether hope could survive in this quiet house. The widow stood, brushing off her hands. "We belong together now," she whispered, voice steady, carrying through the room. The children glanced up at her, some blinking back tears, some smiling faintly. The shadows in the corners seemed less threatening, the candlelight steadier. The wind still rattled the windows, but the house felt smaller, warmer, more contained. The memories would not vanish, but they would be tempered by this fragile, emerging family. She looked around at the children, holding their gazes, letting the weight of the past settle without breaking her. And for the first time that night, the house felt less haunted. The letters, the photographs, the relics of old Griefall were reminders, not chains. She gathered the children closer, holding their hands and brushing hair from faces. "We belong together now," she repeated, louder, firmer, letting the words settle in every corner. The children pressed closer, leaning into her warmth. The shadows waited in the edges, but they no longer felt endless. In the center of the room, with memories pressing around them, a new quiet began to grow. They were together. That was enough. The morning light filtered through the dusty windows, falling across the small kitchen where the children sat at the worn table. The widow moved between them, placing bowls of porridge down with a steady hand. "Eat," she said simply. One boy poked at the food. "Do we have to?" She met his eyes evenly. "Yes, or you'll starve. Your choice." He chewed slowly, looking at her as if testing her words. Another girl whispered, "She's serious." The widow nodded. "Always." A soft murmur ran through the group, half fear, half amusement. After breakfast, she led them outside to the yard. The half-broken swing leaned in the breeze, and the children eyed it warily. "We'll fix that later," she said, picking up a hammer from the small shed. One boy asked, "Can we swing on it now?" She shook her head. "Not until it's safe. You'll hurt yourselves otherwise." Another girl sighed. "But we want to play." She crouched, meeting her eyes. "Playing comes after learning to follow rules. You want freedom? First, you respect limits." The children exchanged glances, some rolling eyes, some frowning. Chores began. She handed a broom to one boy. "Sweep." He raised an eyebrow. "Why me?" "Because it needs doing." "Your turn," he muttered under his breath, shoving the broom forward. A girl picked up a bucket of water. "Do we have to carry it all?" "Yes, carefully. Don't spill." the widow said, watching their movements. Spills mean consequences. The children grumbled, but they obeyed. Laughter broke out when one boy splashed the other accidentally. She watched them, faintly amused herself, letting a small smile show. The children tested boundaries. One boy ran past her toward the shed. "Stop," she called. He skidded to a halt, then smirked. "Can't catch me." She walked calmly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Yes, I can. You know better." He jerked back, but didn't resist. Another girl tried to sneak a treat from the pantry. "Caught you," the widow said softly. "Hands out." She guided the girl's hand back to the counter. "Rules are not suggestions." The girl pouted, but complied. Breakfast dishes stacked in the sink. One boy complained, "This is stupid. Why do we have to do everything?" She met his gaze steadily. "Because someone has to run this house. You want order or chaos?" He hesitated. "Order," he muttered. "Then start acting like it," she said, her voice firm, but not harsh. Another child laughed, brushing flour off her sleeve. "She scares us, but not really," she whispered. The widow heard but said nothing, letting them test and learn. By midday, the tasks were done. She guided them to a small clearing outside. "Sit quiet for a moment." The children shifted, fidgeting. "Why?" one asked. "We need practice." "Patience," she said. The boy frowned. "Patience is boring." She leaned down. "Patience keeps you alive in this world. You'll see." They murmured among themselves, teasing, nudging, learning the rhythm of rules under her careful watch. She smiled faintly, letting them chatter. Dinner brought more quiet tests. One boy dropped a plate, splintering it slightly. "You have to be careful," she said, bending to gather pieces. "Accidents happen. Learn from them." The girl beside him whispered, "She's fair." He grumbled. Fair doesn't stop her from being scary. Laughter rippled across the table, brief but genuine. She let it linger, the first taste of trust forming in small cracks of fear. Later, she called them to gather in the living room. "We're going to practice something." The children eyed her. "What?" asked the boy. "Respect, listening, following instructions." A girl smirked. "Sounds like school." "Exactly. But it matters here," the widow said. She held each of their hands briefly, one by one. The gesture was small, firm, an unspoken badge of authority. "We do this together," she said. The children nodded reluctantly, some rolling eyes. But they stayed. Tasks continued, sweeping, carrying firewood, stacking dishes. Each chore became ritual, a rhythm they began to follow. The widow guided them, hands over theirs, correcting, instructing, letting them make mistakes, then showing the right way. A boy dropped a stick while stacking wood. "Again," she said calmly. "Do it again." He frowned, then tried. The stick stayed. A girl spilled water from a bucket. "Fix it." "Learn," she said. Slowly, the children began to move with awareness, careful of her instructions. By evening, the shadows were long. The children had worked, laughed, tested limits, and learned small lessons. One boy said quietly, "She's not just bossy." Another whispered, "Yeah, she's fair." The widow observed from the doorway, eyes softening slightly. They still glanced nervously at her sometimes, shadows of fear lingering, but they were no longer paralyzed by it. A small boy tugged at her sleeve. "Will you always stay like this?" She crouched, brushing hair from his forehead. "I will. That's part of the rule. I stay. You follow." Together, the night fell, and the house quieted. The children gathered in the living room, hesitant but less fearful. One whispered, "Maybe we like it here." Another nodded. "She makes us do stuff, but it's safe." She watched them, heart tightening, realizing authority and care could coexist. The candlelight flickered across the walls, small shadows clinging, but the house felt steadier. A boy leaned back against the wall. I think I trust her, he murmured. The girl beside him whispered, me too. Sort of. The widow moved among them, checking blankets, smoothing hair, guiding small hands into place. Her presence was quiet but firm, a living anchor in the unsettled house. We'll keep this rhythm, she said softly. Chores, rules, care. It's how we survive. How we grow. Another girl whispered, we'll try. Good, she said, voice low but strong. Shadows still lingered in corners, reminders of past fear, but the children's trust had begun to take root, and she knew it would be enough to carry them through another day. The forest loomed at the edge of the yard, its trees tall and dark against the late afternoon sky. The children clung to one another, glancing nervously between the shadows. It's so dark, whispered one girl. Another boy shivered. I hear things moving. The widow stepped forward, eyes scanning the undergrowth. What things? She asked calmly. I don't know. Branches snapping, leaves rustling, voices. The girl pressed closer to her side. Like someone's whispering. The widow nodded slowly. Sometimes the wind carries sounds. Sometimes our minds play tricks. Stay close. They stepped into the woods, the floor soft with fallen leaves and twigs snapping underfoot. Every crack of a branch made the children jump. Did someone live here before? One boy asked. She shook her head. People passed through. Maybe. But no one waits in the shadows for you. A sudden cry of an animal echoed through the trees. The children froze. What was that? A coyote, she said, voice steady. Or a fox. Nothing else, they whispered among themselves. Tension stretching across the small group. The widow guided them deeper, hands lightly brushing over shoulders to keep them in line. Stay close. Don't wander, she instructed. One boy muttered, why did we come here? She glanced at him. Because fear shrinks when we face it, and hiding doesn't teach courage. A girl whispered, I'm scared. Good, she said softly. Fear tells us we're alive, but we control it, not the other way around. They moved slowly, shadows stretching across the ground, the sun sinking behind distant hills. A well appeared in a small clearing, its stones dark and slick with moss. Look, whispered a child. Water. The widow stepped closer, kneeling to peer into it. The surface reflected twisted images, faces distorted by wind and shadows. Don't stare too long, she said. Our minds can see things that aren't there. One boy dipped a finger into the cold water. It's freezing, he said, eyes wide. Another whispered, I can see myself, but different. She nodded. That's how fear works. Our minds exaggerate, distort. It's natural, but it's not real. Branches scraped overhead. A bird called somewhere, sharp and sudden. The children flinched at every sound. One whispered, I think I saw a man. She turned, hand on his shoulder. You saw shadows. Only shadows, nothing else. Another girl muttered, but what if there's something, like a curse? The widow shook her head. Curses live in stories, not here. The forest doesn't hold power over you. Only your fear does. The children huddled closer. Still trembling but listening, they stopped at a small clearing, and the widow crouched, meeting each of their eyes. I know you've seen things before, heard things in empty houses, at night, felt people leave, but here, now, you have me, and I'm not going anywhere. A boy whispered, but what if it comes anyway? She shook her head slowly. Nothing comes that we cannot face together. Remember that. The children nodded, swallowing hard, still tense, but grounding themselves in her words. A shadow shifted across the trees. The children gasped. One girl whispered, it moved again. Only the branches, the widow said, or your imagination. Fear makes small things larger. A sudden snap behind them made one boy spin. Run, he asked. She shook her head. No, walk. Steady steps. Nothing chases you. They moved cautiously, eyes flicking to every dark shape, muscles tight. But under her watchful presence, fear began to shrink. A child tugged at her sleeve. "I keep seeing faces." She nodded, voice low. "Our memories follow us. Sometimes the past reaches through shadows, trying to trick us. But we are stronger than those images. We choose what we see." One boy laughed softly, nervously. "I guess we are." Another whispered, "I feel braver." "A little." She smiled faintly, letting the quiet stretch in the forest between their breaths. They reached the edge of the woods. The shadows fell behind them like long fingers. The well gleamed faintly in the fading light, a reminder of distorted fears left behind. "See," she said softly, "nothing waited for us, only ourselves." One girl touched her hand. "You weren't scared?" She looked down, eyes dark. "I was, but I don't let it stop me." "You shouldn't either." A boy muttered, "I think I can try." Another whispered, "Me too." The children began to laugh quietly, small sounds that felt fragile but genuine. One tripped over a route, another teased him, and the widow allowed herself a small smile. Shadows still lingered, moving in the corners of vision, but the tension was easing. She held the hands of two children, guiding them forward, silent but firm. The group moved together, slowly, carefully, toward the yard that marked the edge of home. At the clearing's edge, the forest gave way to open light. The house stood quiet and still, windows reflecting the evening sky. The children's grip on her hands tightened. "We made it," she whispered, letting their fingers rest against hers. They nodded, exhausted but relieved. One boy muttered, "I thought we'd get lost." "Not with me," she said softly. "I'm here, and I won't leave. Not ever." The candlelight from the windows flickered against the porch as they emerged. The shadows of the trees stretched behind them, dark and persistent, but the house's warmth was a promise. The children stayed close, hands in hers, shoulders brushing, their breaths slowing. They had faced the forest and returned. Fear had followed, but under her guidance, it had lost its edge. She led them through the yard, one by one, through the door, still holding hands. The children whispered among themselves, tentative, but beginning to trust. Outside, the night pressed close, quiet now, and the wind softened. The widow let go slowly, standing at the threshold, watching them settle inside. No words were needed. The hands still entwined, the gentle reassurance of proximity, were enough. They had walked through fear and returned, together. The shadows might linger, but so would the strength she offered. The attic was dim, the only light from a small window streaked with dust. The children had followed hesitantly, peering at old trunks and crates. One boy whispered, "Why are we up here?" She didn't answer at first, letting their whispers fill the quiet space. Then she said, "Sometimes the past shows us things we need to see." She opened a trunk, its hinges groaning. Inside lay a bundle of papers, yellowed and brittle. Her hand froze on one envelope, sealed with wax. She held it carefully, eyes scanning the handwriting. "Look at this," she said softly. A girl leaned closer. "What is it?" The widow lifted it. "A letter. Someone wrote this long ago? About you?" The children exchanged glances. "About us. Who?" a boy whispered. She shook her head. "I don't know yet, but it matters." One child stepped back. "Should we open it?" She paused, considering. "We have to. Knowledge is the first step to safety." Carefully, she broke the wax, sliding the letter free. The paper smelled faintly of old ink and dust. The letter was brief, formal, and heavy with implication. "These children, they are not as they seem. Protecting them may require measures the town will not approve." She read aloud, voice low but steady. The children huddled closer, some eyes wide, others darting to each other. One girl whispered, "What does it mean?" "It means," the widow said slowly, "that there are secrets about your past. Secrets others may try to use against you. A boy swallowed hard. Against us. Why? She shook her head. Because power in this place is cruel. Sometimes people fear what they do not understand. The children whispered among themselves. We never had anyone before, one boy said softly. Maybe they wanted to keep us hidden. She nodded. Perhaps. But hidden doesn't always mean safe. Another child asked. Was it our fault? Her eyes met theirs. No, never. Children don't make these choices. Adults do. The girl pressed her lips together. I think I remember. Something, she said, voice trembling. A man, or a house. I don't know. The widow crouched, taking each of their hands in turn. You don't have to understand everything now. You only need to know you're safe here. With me, a boy whispered. But what if they come for us? She exhaled slowly. Then we stand together. You and I know one can break this family if we refuse. The children were quiet, processing her words. A girl whispered, I think I trust you. Another nodded. Me too. She smiled faintly, though the letter pressed heavily on her chest. Did anyone else see this? One boy asked, voice low. Not yet, she said. I will read the letter carefully first, and then we decide what to do. We cannot show it to anyone who might use it against you. One girl frowned. It feels like a warning. She nodded. It is, but it's also a map, a guide. It tells me what I need to protect you. The children listened, eyes wide, some trembling. Do you think they wanted to hurt us? Asked the boy softly. I think they wanted control, she said, and that is something we cannot allow. They lingered in the attic. Shadows falling across faces, the envelope lying open between them. One child asked, Can we read it too? She shook her head. Not yet. Some things are too heavy to carry alone. I'll tell you what matters. The rest, you'll learn in time, when it is safe. Another whispered, I think I feel scared. She nodded. Good fear is part of understanding. It keeps us alert, but we do not let it rule us. A boy muttered, I think I can be brave, with you. She smiled faintly, placing her hand over his. Yes, that's what I need. Bravery, even small, is enough. The shadows in the corners pressed closer. The attic seemed to hold its breath. She read the letter again, noting names and dates, trying to trace the edges of secrets buried long ago. This letter, she said, voice low, tells me what some people might try to take from you. And it tells me I must act, protect you, keep you here, where you belong. A girl whispered, Act how? She met her gaze. I don't yet know everything, but I do know this. The wider town will not understand. Some will resist. Some may try to interfere, and I must face them, for you. The children glanced at one another, fear and hope mixing in their eyes. One boy asked softly, Do we have to be brave again? She nodded. Yes, but we've already practiced. We've faced the forest, the night fear itself. We know now that courage is possible. Together, we can do what must be done. Another whispered, I think I can, with you. She squeezed their hands, letting the words settle. The attic felt heavier, but a sense of purpose now threaded through the space. The shadows in corners seemed less threatening, diminished by the presence of shared understanding. We stay here, she said, voice low. We stay together. Nothing breaks us. A girl nodded. We trust you. The boy beside her added, We do. She exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing against her chest. The letter had opened a door she could not ignore, but it had also clarified what she must do. As the sun fell lower, casting streaks of light across the dusty floor, the widow gathered the children close. She tucked the letter safely into her coat, a reminder of secrets now in her care. Tomorrow, she whispered, we face the world outside these walls, but we do it together. The children clung to her, small hands in hers, shadows lingering but tempered by trust. She realized then that protecting them meant confronting more than ghosts, it meant confronting the living. And she would. The courthouse steps were cold beneath her boots. The children huddled close, glancing nervously at the townsfolk gathering, faces lined with judgment. One boy whispered, "Why are they staring?" She exhaled slowly, "Because we're different. Because they think they can scare us." A girl tugged at her sleeve. "I don't like it." "None of us do," the widow said. "But hiding never protects anyone." The children shifted closer, shoulders brushing, hands gripping hers. An older man stepped forward, cane tapping the stone. "Widow, you shouldn't have taken them. They're not yours to raise." She met his glare evenly. "They are now, and I will raise them right." A woman spat. "You think you can do better than the families before." Her eyes narrowed. "I don't think. I know. I care for them. And that's more than anyone else did." Murmurs ran through the crowd, some nodding in agreement, others frowning. A boy piped up, voice shaking, "We don't want to go back." The townsfolk stiffened, some scoffing. "Children should respect who raised them," one man said. The widow crouched to meet the boy's gaze. "You spoke truth," she said softly. "Stand with me." "You have a voice too," another girl whispered. "They'll never listen." "Then we make them," she said quietly, tone hardening. She stood, hands resting on the children's shoulders. The crowd pressed closer, their voices rising. "They'll learn their place." Someone shouted. A woman hissed, "You're corrupting them." The children flinched, glancing at one another. The widow raised her voice, calm but cutting. "You corrupted them before. I saved them from that. I won't allow fear to dictate their lives now. Not ever." A murmur of surprise ran through the town. The older man shook his head. "You think your words protect them." She met him squarely. "Words, actions, care, they all matter. And I will use them." A child whimpered. "Why are they so mean?" She crouched, brushing his hair back. "Because they fear change. Because they see what they want gone and can't stop it." The boy's eyes filled with tears. "Will they hurt us?" Her gaze swept the crowd. "Not if I stand with you," a girl whispered. "I'm scared." "Good," the widow said softly. "Fear reminds us to be vigilant, but courage guides what we do next." A town elder spat on the steps. "You think you're strong? Alone with them?" She stepped forward, voice rising. "I am strong enough for all of us, and you will not dictate who these children become." The children echoed softly, small voices, gaining strength. "Not you," a boy yelled. "They're ours." Another girl shouted, "Leave us alone." The widow's eyes scanned the crowd. Shadows shifted in disapproval, anger in lines of judgment etched by generations. One man pointed at the widow. "Do you know who we are? Our families built this town. You're nothing." She lifted her chin. "I know exactly who you are, and I also know the difference between power and authority. You wield power without care. I wield authority with love. That matters more than your history ever will." The crowd tensed, a silence following her words. She breathed slowly, letting it linger, letting the children feel her strength. The children whispered among themselves. "Did she mean it?" "Yes," one boy said softly. "She won't let them win." The widow crouched, placing hands over theirs. "We're a family, and nothing outside this circle can harm us if we stay together." A woman muttered, "They'll regret this." "Regret is yours," she said sharply. "You will not touch these children with fear or malice. Not while I live." The children stood straighter, tiny shoulders back, facing the town with her. Another elder huffed, "You think your courage matters?" She stepped closer, voice sharp. "It does, because actions matter more than history. Care matters more than cruelty, and love matters more than your judgment." A boy whispered, "They're quiet now." She nodded. "Yes, they're thinking, maybe learning, maybe scared, but they're listening." The children took a small step forward, mirroring her stance. The tension stretched, heavy and palpable, as the wind rustled leaves and shadows stretched across the courthouse steps. The town elders leaned forward, eyes hard, but the widow did not falter. She reached down, taking a child's hand, then another, linking them together. "We leave now," she said softly, voice steady. "Not because we fear, because we have a home to return to, and that home is ours." The children clutched her hands tightly, walking behind her as they stepped down the cold stone stairs. The murmurs of the town followed, whispers of disapproval and grudging recognition. A boy whispered, "Do you think they'll try again?" "Perhaps," she said quietly, "but courage and love will face them every time." Another girl whispered, "We're safe now." She looked down at them, eyes firm. "For tonight, and together, we make tomorrow safer." By the time they reached the edge of the town, shadows of scorn and judgment lingered, but the group pressed on, homeward bound. The children's steps faltered occasionally, trembling at imagined threats, but the widow held them steady. One whispered, "I think we won." She smiled faintly, though exhaustion pressed against her chest. "We did what mattered. We stood together, and that counts more than their opinions." The house appeared, quiet, a fragile sanctuary against the world outside. They paused at the threshold, breaths slowing, hearts still racing. The widow looked at each child, eyes softening. "We are not broken, not by words, not by fear, not by history. We are ours now." The children smiled faintly, some wiping tears, others brushing at dirt. Shadows of scorn had not vanished, but their strength had grown, a quiet defiance that would endure. The smell of smoke hit them before they saw the flames. One boy shouted, "Fire! Fire in the barn!" The widow spun, eyes narrowing, scanning the darkened yard. Flames licked the wooden beams, sparks shooting into the night. "Get back," she yelled, voice sharp. The children stumbled, frozen, some gripping one another, fear pinching their faces. "We need water," another shouted, panic rising in their small voices. She grabbed a pail from the side, tossing it toward the well. "Hurry, everyone stay together." The children hesitated, eyes wide. "I can't. It's too hot," one girl cried. The widow grabbed her hand. You must, trust me." A boy's voice quavered. "The fire's spreading." She nodded, scanning the barn. "I see it. Move fast." The crackling grew louder, heat pressing against their backs. Smoke stung their eyes. Another child whimpered, "I don't want to die." She crouched, meeting his gaze. "No one dies tonight. Not if we stay calm. Listen to me. Every step." The widow directed them toward the water pump, hands guiding, voices firm. "2 at a time. 1 trip each. Hurry." Sparks landed near a pile of hay. "Stop," she shouted, yanking a boy back. "Stay low. Watch your footing." Flames flared as wind shifted. "It's too fast," a child cried. "No, it isn't," she countered, voice cutting through panic. "We control what we can. Follow me." They shuffled, small hands clutching hers, smoke curling around them. One boy fell. "Help me." The widow lunged, pulling him upright. "Careful. Careful now." Another screamed, the haze burning. She grabbed a pail, tossing water. Steam hissed, sparks scattered. Again, "Don't stop." The children mimicked, small hands splashing water onto the wood, fire retreating slightly. One girl whispered, "It's too big." She crouched, eyes fierce. "Then we fight together. Fear will not win." Flames crackled closer to the main house. "Stay back. Stay back," she commanded. The children pressed together, trembling. Smoke filled their lungs. "I can't see," a boy shouted. She grabbed his shoulders. "Don't panic. Follow my voice. Follow my hands. We get through this together." Another child tripped, scraped knees, crying. She lifted him, Good. Keep moving. Don't stop. You're brave, all of you. A sudden collapse of a beam shook the barn. Sparks flew across the yard. One child screamed, "It's falling." She ducked with them, shielding small bodies with her own. "It's okay. It's okay. Breathe. We're okay." The children's breaths came fast, fear mixing with adrenaline. "I can't do this," one girl whispered. "Yes, you can," the widow said, voice soft but firm. "Look at you. You're doing it. You're alive. You're helping. That is courage." They moved closer to the well, small hands dipping pails in the cold water. "Faster," she shouted, pouring on the flames. The children followed, rhythm forming, fear blending with action. "It's working," one boy gasped. Smoke still stung their eyes, but the fire's roar lessened slightly. "Keep going. Don't stop now." Sparks hit the grass, small fires starting, quickly doused by frantic splashing. One child cried out, "My hand, it's burned." She pulled him close, examining a small blister. "Minor. We'll treat it." "You're okay?" another whispered. "We almost didn't make it." She nodded. "And we did. Together. Every one of you." The fire still smoldered, black smoke curling, but the barn's worst was contained. Charred hay and wood dotted the ground. The widow checked each child, brushing soot from hair and cheeks. "Are you all hurt?" "Just scared," a boy admitted. Another girl sniffled. "We're okay now." She pulled them into a loose circle. "Yes, you're alive. You're safe. And you helped each other. That matters more than anything burned tonight." They looked at her, awe and relief mingling in their faces. A small cut on her arm burned slightly, unnoticed, until she flexed her hand. One boy gasped, "You're hurt." She smiled faintly, wiping soot from her forehead. "I'm fine. Just a scratch. Nothing that matters compared to all of you." The children pressed closer, hands on hers, small murmurs of relief. One whispered, "You saved us." She shook her head, voice soft. "We saved each other. That is how families survive. That is how courage grows." The barn still smoldered behind them, blackened skeletons of beams and hay casting long shadows. The wind shifted, carrying smoke away, leaving a quiet hush. The children's small bodies leaned against her, exhausted but alive. "We'll clean it up tomorrow," she said. "Tonight, we rest. We remember what we did, together." One girl whispered, "I think I'm braver now." Another boy nodded. "Me too." The widow let herself breathe fully, tension easing. The children clung to one another, and to her, small hearts beating in rhythm with hers. "This night," she said quietly, voice low, "proved something. Fear cannot break us. Fire cannot break us. Only we, together, define what survives." They looked at the charred barn, silent witnesses to danger faced and overcome. Shadows lingered, smoke drifting like ghosts. But the bond forged in crisis was stronger than any fear. They finally turned toward the house, small hands still held tightly. Each step was careful, deliberate, a quiet triumph. The night air was heavy with soot and relief. One boy whispered, "We made it." She smiled faintly, brushing hair from soot-streaked faces. "Yes, we did. Together." The children followed. Courage tempered by fear now softened. The memory of fire, a reminder of resilience and trust. The attic smelled of dust and old wood. The children lingered near the window, staring at the fading light. "I don't like this place," one whispered. "It feels heavy." She nodded, moving slowly toward an old chest, hands brushing over its cracked surface. "Some things are heavy, but we can bear them together." She opened it carefully, revealing broken toys, scattered letters, and old family portraits, faces worn with time and sorrow. A boy pointed at a photograph. "Is that us?" She leaned closer. "It is, and it tells a story you need to hear." A girl's voice trembled. Why did they leave us? The widow knelt, voice soft. They didn't care enough. That's all. It wasn't your fault. The children exchanged glances, some eyes wet. One boy muttered, "They hurt us. Sometimes worse than now." Another whispered, "I never told anyone." She placed her hands on their shoulders. "Now you can. Here, we speak truth. Here, we are safe." A girl shook, clutching a ragged doll. I broke my brother's toy. Because I was mad. They laughed at me. Then I hit him." The boy's face flinched. "I didn't mean to push her. The widow's eyes softened. You are children. You made mistakes. And mistakes don't define you. The past cannot hurt you here." They shivered, voices mixing with the soft creaking of the attic floor. One boy whispered, "They starved us sometimes. Locked us out." Another muttered, "I fought back. I hit someone. They called me bad." The widow placed her hand gently on his chest. "You were surviving, all of you. And now, survival becomes safety." A girl shuddered, pointing at a scarred doll. "I burned it. I was angry. They yelled at me anyway." She knelt, voice quiet. "I understand. Anger can feel like fire inside, but fire can be contained. You are safe from it now." The children's murmurs grew, confessions spilling like water. "I stole bread. I lied to them. I hid from everyone." The widow listened, nodding, guiding them with her presence. "You did what you had to. Nothing you confess changes the fact that you are loved now." A boy looked at her, tears streaked through dirt. "Will you still want us?" She brushed his hair back gently. "I already do, more than I can say. You belong here, all of you." They pressed closer, voices trembling. "I hurt my sister too. I said terrible things to the others. I was mean because I was scared." The widow placed her hands over theirs. "And now, we heal, together. Fear no longer has power here. Hatred has no place, only truth and care." One child whispered, "Do we have to keep talking?" She shook her head. "Only as much as you need. Your voices are yours. You choose." A boy knelt, pointing at a photograph. They never smiled like this at us." She followed his gaze. "No, but that doesn't make you any less worthy of love," another whispered. "I wish I had a mother." She knelt, taking both small hands in hers. "You do, now, and that matters more than anything they withheld from you." Silence settled briefly, broken by soft, hesitant sniffles. A girl whispered, I think I can try." "Try what?" She smiled faintly. "To believe in someone again. To trust." The widow nodded. "Yes, that's the first step." The children huddled together, small hands touching, some brushing hers. "We're scared," one admitted. "I know," she said, "and it's okay. Fear is part of learning safety, part of learning family, but it cannot rule you here." The attic seemed to breathe with them. Old wood creaking in acknowledgement, shadows softening in the evening light. A boy murmured, "We called her." The girl whispered, "Mother." The widow's eyes softened, voice low and tender. "Yes, mother, if you want." One child repeated hesitantly, "Mother." Another echoed, "Mother." Their voices were small, fragile, yet filled with tentative trust. She nodded, brushing hair from soot-streaked cheeks. "Yes, you may call me that. Always." The children leaned into her, some curling against her knees, others holding her hands. "I was bad," one boy whispered. "No," she said softly. "You were lost. But lost children can be found, and you have been found. By me, by each other." "That is enough," another girl whispered. "Do you forgive us?" She cupped her face, eyes steady. "I forgive everything, always. You are safe. You are loved, and you are mine to protect." A boy shivered. I think I'm happy. The widow smiled faintly. Happiness grows slowly, and it grows strongest with trust. The children murmured softly, small smiles breaking through tears. Shadows of past neglect lingered in the corners, but her presence, firm and gentle, pushed them back. They whispered together, fragile voices blending with the settling dust. "Mother," a girl said again, more confidently. "Mother," a boy echoed, tone stronger. She held them close, chest rising with their breaths, the weight of the past settling lightly now, eased by forgiveness. "Yes," she whispered, voice low, steady. "We belong together now, always." The children pressed closer, small bodies trembling with relief. Soft sobs fading into quiet breathing. The old portraits leaned against the wall. Broken toys scattered around, shadows softened. They were no longer just memories of neglect, they were markers of survival, of trials faced, and now overcome. The widow's hands rested on the children's shoulders, firm yet gentle, grounding them. "We are a family," she said quietly, "not by blood, but by care, and that is enough." Softly, one girl whispered, "Thank you, Mother." Another echoed, "Thank you, Mother." The boy added, "We love you." She pressed her cheek to theirs, "And I love you, all of you." The children held her, small hands clutching hers, fragile yet resilient. The attic seemed quieter, the air lighter. Shadows of the past lingered, but here, under her watch, the children were safe, forgiven, and finally home. The air was thick with dust, the same as years ago. The auctioneer stepped onto the widow's porch, gavel in hand, eyes cold. "Thought you could hide them?" he spat. One of the children gripped her skirts, small fingers trembling. She squared her shoulders. "We're not hiding. You won't take them." His laugh was harsh, echoing across the yard. "Not take them. They were never yours to begin with." A boy stepped forward, voice sharp. "They are ours now. Leave us alone." The auctioneer smirked. "Oh, you think a widow can defy me? You think this house and these children mean more than what's owed?" She met his gaze, voice low and steady. "What's owed is cruelty, and we won't pay it any more." The children clustered close, silent but tense, watching every movement. "Your money won't save you this time," he said, tapping the gavel against his palm. "Power isn't in your pockets." She shook her head. "Power is here," she said, placing a hand on the nearest child. "And here," she added, gesturing to the others. The children looked up at her, uncertainty mixing with trust. "We face this together." He stepped closer, voice rising. "I warned you once. I own the debts of the past. You can't rewrite them." She advanced, one hand brushing dust from the porch rail. "We rewrite nothing. We live, we protect. That is more than you ever did." One girl whispered, "Will he hurt us?" She crouched, looking each child in the eyes. "He won't. Not if we stand. Not if we stay together." The auctioneer's eyes narrowed. "You'll pay for defiance." She laughed softly, sharp but controlled. "You think threats scare us? You only prove how small you are." One boy spat into the dirt. "Go away, or we fight." The widow placed a calming hand on his shoulder. "Let me speak. Listen first, then move." He waved the gavel, impatience flashing. "Talk fast, then. Time is short." Her voice rose, firm, carrying over the quiet yard. "I bought them, not for coins, not for applause. I bought them because they are human, because they deserve protection. You have no right here. You never did." The auctioneer laughed again, shaking his head. "Big words for a woman with empty arms. Do you think a court will back you?" She stepped forward, body straight, unwavering. "I don't need a court. I have them. I have truth. And I have courage. That is all that matters." He slammed the gavel against the floor. Dust kicked up, motes swirling in the sunlight. You think courage stops debts? You're blind. She held her ground. Blindness is on your side. We see each other. We see justice. We see family. One girl stepped forward, small voice, but defiant. They can't hurt us. She's with us. I trust her. Another child nodded. Me too. We're together. The auctioneer's face twisted, frustration mounting. I warned you. I own this town. I own respect. You've made a mistake. She leaned in slightly, voice low but cutting. The only mistake is thinking fear rules here. Fear rules those without care. We have care. That is stronger than any gavel, any coin, any threat. Silence fell, thick and tense, punctuated only by the wind stirring dust. He shifted, pacing slightly, gavel tapping unevenly. You'll regret this. One day, they'll see. They'll call you foolish. She smiled faintly, unshaken. Let them see. Let them know. Foolishness in the face of cruelty is courage, and courage lives longer than fear. One boy muttered, "She's right." You can't win, another whispered. We're not afraid. Their voices grew, small but firm, merging into a quiet chorus of defiance. He jabbed the gavel again, raising his voice. I will return, and when I do, it will be different. She stood straighter, chin lifted. Then we will be ready, and you will see this family will not break. The children pressed close, shoulders brushing hers, silent solidarity in the line of threat. Their small faces reflected the same resolve she held. For a long moment, he glared, scanning their united stance, weighing the challenge. Then he scoffed, spinning on his heel, gavel tucked under his arm. This isn't over, he warned, voice carrying down the road. Mark my words. She did not flinch. We'll mark it too, with life, with strength, with care, the children murmured. We will. As his dust-stirred figure faded down the lane, the widow exhaled slowly. Hands still resting lightly on the children, she turned to them. You see? Fear is loud, but courage is louder. We stay together. We face it all. One girl whispered. We're safe? She smiled faintly. For now, and when we're not, we stand again. Always together. The wind shifted, carrying the echoes of the gavel down the empty road. Dust settled on the porch boards, on the children's hair, on her shoulders. Shadows of past rejection lingered faintly in the corners, but their unity, solid and unwavering, cast a light stronger than any threat. The children clung to her lightly, some leaning, some holding her hands. Mother one whispered softly. She nodded, voice low but firm. Yes, together, always. The sun dipped lower, shadows lengthening, but the house no longer felt small or vulnerable. It felt guarded, held by more than walls, more than locks. It was guarded by courage, by trust, and by the quiet but unbreakable bond between them. The auctioneer might return, the town might judge, but tonight, they had faced the threat together and stood, unbroken, united, alive. Morning light filtered through the curtains, soft and warm. The house smelled of bread and smoke, a hearth recently lit. The children moved quietly, still unsure of themselves, yet the tension that had haunted them for months seemed to ease with each small task. A girl adjusted the repaired swing outside, laughter spilling as it creaked back and forth. Look, Mother, she said, voice bright, it works again. The widow smiled, leaning on the doorframe, watching her carefully. It's perfect, she said softly, just like you. A boy tugged at her sleeve, small hands sticky with flour. I made pancakes, he said, voice proud. Try one. She knelt, tasting the warm bread, nodding. Delicious. You've outdone yourself. The children exchanged glances, laughter rippling quietly through the kitchen. One whispered, We're really home, aren't we? She looked at them, voice calm but firm. Yes, this is ours now. Every corner, every floorboard, every heartbeat, hours together. They moved through the house, tidying, laughing quietly, a chorus of small victories. I put your chair by the window, one girl said. You like it there? She nodded, settling into the spot, sunlight on her face. I do. I really do. Shadows lingered in corners, soft reminders of what had been, but her presence kept them at bay. One boy peeked from behind a door. Will you tell us stories now? She smiled faintly, brushing hair from his forehead. Of course. Every night, if you like. Outside, the repaired swing swayed gently in the morning breeze. The widow watched, hands resting lightly on the children's shoulders as they took turns. One child laughed, then another, the sound echoing across the yard, mingling with the faint chirping of birds. We're happy, a girl said softly. I think. I really am happy. She knelt, voice low but warm. Then hold on to it. Let it fill you. Let it guide you. You've earned this happiness. Every one of you. The children gathered near the hearth as the day stretched on. Candlelight flickered across their faces, soft and golden. I never thought, one boy whispered, I'd feel safe. A girl added. She placed a hand over theirs. You are safe. You are protected, and you are loved. That is all that matters now. Another child reached for her hand. We love you too, he said quietly. She smiled, voice catching slightly. And I love you. All of you. A girl tilted her head, looking at the repaired swing through the window. Do you think we can play there forever? She laughed softly. Forever is long, but yes. We can make it ours for as long as we live. And if it breaks again, we'll fix it together. The children whispered agreements, small voices mixing with gentle laughter. One boy leaned against her shoulder. Mother, can we really stay? She pressed her cheek to his hair. Yes, you're home. All of you. You always have been. Evening came, soft and amber, and the house felt alive with warmth. The hearth crackled, flames dancing on the walls, casting long, comforting shadows. One girl held a candle, eyes wide. It feels nice, she said. It feels like we belong. She nodded, kneeling beside her. Belonging is not just a place. It's a feeling, carried in hearts that care. And our hearts are here, together. Another whispered, I think. I never want to leave. She smiled faintly, brushing hair from his forehead. Then don't. We'll make sure you never have to. Small voices whispered across the house, laughter and chatter weaving together. We painted your room, one boy said. It's bright. We fixed the garden, a girl added. She nodded at them, pride and warmth in her gaze. You've done all of this for us, too, she said softly. We belong to each other now. That is the greatest gift. Another child hugged her, small arms tight. We're yours, he said simply. She pressed her face into their shoulder, breathing slowly, letting the moment fill her. Night settled, shadows deepening, but the house no longer felt empty. Candles lined the windowsills, flickering across smiling faces. One girl whispered, We're a family now. She nodded, hands resting lightly on their shoulders. Yes, and families protect, and families care, and families stay together. No one can take that away. The children pressed closer, small hands holding hers, leaning against her, feeling the warmth radiating from the hearth and her steady presence. A boy looked up at her, voice trembling slightly. Do you really mean it? We can call you Mother. She blinked, voice catching. Yes, always, if you want. They exchanged small glances, uncertainty fading into trust. One whispered again, Mother. Another repeated, Mother. Their voices grew more confident, soft but firm. Mother, the smallest child added, voice barely above a whisper. She smiled through tears, voice low but steady. Yes, Mother. You may always call me that. The repaired swing outside caught the moonlight as children crept in for one last glance. Tomorrow, we can swing again, one whispered. She nodded, voice gentle. Tomorrow, and every day after. Together, we make it ours. They smiled, small but certain, feeling the safety and love that had once seemed impossible. We'll never be afraid again, a boy said. Not if we stay together. She nodded, pressing their hands into hers. Exactly. Together is the only way. The candlelight flickered, casting golden warmth across the room. The hearth crackled, old wood settling as if in approval. One girl whispered, I love you, Mother. I love you too, she replied, voice soft, steady. Another voice followed, I love you, Mother. One by one, they whispered the word, each adding their own. Their small voices blended, a chorus of safety, trust, and love. She held them close, letting the moment linger, feeling the last echoes of fear and past neglect fall away. Shadows of memories still touched the corners, but warmth, laughter, and care filled every inch. The house breathed with them, alive, full of belonging. One last whisper floated from the children, soft and unanimous. Mother. She smiled through tears, voice low, tender, full of everything she had fought to protect. Yes, Mother. The house was quiet, bathed in warm candlelight. The children sat close, small hands holding hers. The repaired swing creaked gently outside, catching moonlight. One whispered, Mother. Another echoed, Mother. Their voices grew soft but certain. She smiled through tears, voice low and steady. Yes, Mother. Silence fell, gentle and full. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying away the last echoes of fear. Inside, for the first time, they were home, together, safe, loved,